Good morning, everyone. My name is Heather Turner, and I'm going to be talking about content creation and aggregation for small businesses. And I'm going to start out with some of the basics, and actually just a couple of quick housekeeping things before we start. I am recording this, and I will be sending the link to Lenny. So if you would like a copy of that, please let him know. I know we'll be going over quite a few things this morning. You might want to go and review it at some point. I do have a couple of handouts. If you go to the right-hand side of your screen, there should be a little tab that says handouts. And the two that I'm bringing up today to show you on the screen are actually the ones that you can download. If you don't get a chance to download them before we end, or you forget for whatever reason, please email me and I'd be happy to email them to you. And if you have any questions as we go through, again, right to the right, there is a little toolbar that says ask questions. So I would encourage you to ask them, and I will try to get to them at the end of the webinar. So today, one of the biggest questions we get is, what can we post? And there's a lot of different things that a business can post about, but it's really going to depend on what type of business. Are you a service business? Are you someplace that has a home office or a brick and mortar business? Do you sell business to consumer, or do you sell business to business? And one of the best ways to start out and figure out what types of things you're going to post is to build a mind map. And for those not familiar with what mind maps are, mind maps is you take a sheet of paper, you draw a big circle in it, and then you draw spokes outside of it. So you kind of look like you have a big sun. And what you're going to do is you're going to rate your business type, or your whatever the name of your business, with whatever category your organization is in, and then start rating outside of it associated things. So if you are in woodworking, for example, you might write in wood laminates. You might write in wood stains, for example. So go around this, and these will all give you some topics about which you can not only post, but you can go out and find information that you can aggregate to repost on your own social media. Now, the reality of social media is, if all you're posting is about your business, then people don't honestly really care. But more importantly, you run out of content awfully quickly. So to take the woodworking business as a prime example of that, you might want to highlight, if you're doing personalized woodworking, your projects, for example. But if you're talking about stains, for example, you might want to go in search of informational articles about what stains are the best ones to use, what types of colors will look best on certain types of woods, informational tips like how long you should really let stains set before applying a second coat, for example. So there's a lot of different things that you can do to talk about fields that are related to you, that are interesting, that are helpful. In some cases, they might be funny, and try to get as visual as possible without just talking about yourself and about your business. Now, this is kind of a general idea for page posts, but if you've built that mind map, it will give you more of an idea in general about what types of information you can start to aggregate. Because realistically, about 90% of the content on the internet right now, and especially on social media, is not your own. It's what's called repurposed. So you're not stealing other people's ideas, but you're taking them and you're sharing them, and you're kind of giving them your own take on them. In order to build good engagement, you're going to take a post that might talk about certain stains, for example, to use the woodworking one. I know we have someone that does woodworking on the call, so I thought that might be a good one to use. And, say I came across this great article about, woodworking stains, but by the way, I don't particularly agree with this because, or they might have added this, or this is my own take on it. And you don't have to personalize it, but those bits of information also help. If you do disagree with something, you want to be polite about it. But it does help in terms of putting yourself out as an expert, and even just sharing things and sharing content that are related to your business can help you know, publicize the fact that, you know, your business is marketing itself. It's putting itself out there as an expert in whatever you do, whether it's a service business or it's a brick and mortar business, you know, and having content. Now, one of the biggest challenges that businesses face is the fact that how do I aggregate this content and how do I get ahead of it? Initially, when you start aggregating content to start setting up the tools that you use to do that, it's going to take a little while, but once it's done, it's a lot easier to access, and then it's basically one-stop shopping for your information. Now, I'm going to close this one up, and we're going to talk about a weekly marketing schedule for a small business. Now, this is customizable any way you'd like to. This is just sort of a recommended, and you may not want to all necessarily use all of these tools, but this is what works. And I know for a fact that we've had some people that have added some things to this, and it really doesn't take that long to do each of these things. But the most important part of this is put this into your content schedule. If you're going to use social media for marketing, and I like using social media to going to the dentist. Nobody likes to go to the dentist, but you kind of have to do it, unfortunately, nowadays. So unless you put it into your schedule and you stick to it and you say, you know, every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday morning, I'm going to spend 5 minutes or 15 minutes doing this, and check it off and make sure you actually do it, then it's one of those things that people wait till the last minute, and 11 o'clock at night, they think about, oh, you know, I really should do that, should have done that post for Facebook today. But people don't like to, and that's unfortunately the reality of it. But this is just kind of a way to get ahead of yourself a little bit and make sure that you are doing some housekeeping like Google Alerts, and I'll talk about that in a few more minutes. And you don't have to do all of this stuff, but it's just some suggestions. These are some aggregation tools. I'm going to show you Workflowy. Trello is another one. Both of these are free. Content sources. This is Google Alerts. And even if you're not going to start doing content curation and aggregation for your business, I really suggest from a reputation management standpoint that you set up Google Alerts for your business and for yourself as well. You can just Google Alerts, and then you can set up as many alerts as you want. So if my name was John Doe Innkeeper, I would set that up, and I would set up the name of my inn, for example, and put it in quotation marks, and also set up an alert with my website link in it. You can also monitor your competition this way. You can monitor news about the area. You can monitor news about your industry. And what it will do is it'll aggregate any new content that comes into Google on a daily basis, and you can set the alerts up to come in daily, weekly, as they happen. And then if you're not getting specific results for it, go in and edit those. But again, put whatever you're looking for in quotation marks. You'll get better search results for this. And it is important from a business standpoint and from personal standpoint, especially, and I'll go back to this for a sec, for reputation management, because you may end up in the news and you may not know about it. That doesn't necessarily mean it's bad in the news, but you might be mentioned in an article, for example, as a quote. You know, you might want to know that because the local Chicopee paper, you know, gave you a two-sentence quote, and they were at the local Chamber of Commerce meeting that they talked to you for a couple minutes. You know, that helps you because you can use that content then to help promote both your business and promote your local chamber if you're involved with it, for example, on your own social media. So that's going to give you some additional content as well when it pops up. TalkWalker Alerts is similar to Google Alerts. There's a free version and a paid version. You don't need anything but the free version. Paperly is tied into Twitter, and it's tied into Twitter lists, and I can go over that a bit later. SmartBrief, depending on what industry you're in, what SmartBrief does is it has a whole bunch of different, I guess I'll call them newspapers, but they're They're articles on all different types of professions and all different types of businesses. And what they do is they basically go out and they scour the web on a daily basis and aggregate for you all of the best articles about things. So if you were in healthcare, for example, it would deliver to your inbox all of the best articles that it had looked for over the past day, specifically about healthcare. And these are some other ones. Signing up for newsletters or blogs is always helpful. Storify, Scoop.it, and Pearltrees are also some other aggregation tools that you can use. Now, actually, one of the first ones that I'm going to go over is something called interest lists. Now, if you have a Facebook business page, you might have other content that you might want to share. So if you were a wedding planner, for example, you might want to be sharing things from the business page called The Knot, or from Wedding Wire, or some local wedding photographers. Now you can go out and like those pages personally, or you can go and like those pages as your business page. The problem with doing that is the way Facebook's algorithms work is they filter out about 99% of what business pages post. So if I personally like 400 business pages, for example, the odds that I'm going to see any of their business pages in my regular feed is extremely small. Now, Facebook does have something called interest lists, which a lot of people don't actually know about, which what it does is it lets you aggregate business pages all together so that you can go to a particular list that you've made, and it's aggregated all of the posts from all of those pages together. So I'll give you an example of this. This is a interest list that I made of INS associations because I work with a lot of INS. So I'm going to click on this. And I've got 90 INS associations on this list. And what it lets me do is I can scroll down, and it's not filtering any information at all out. It's just giving me, it's not even giving you the personal feed. It's giving me all of the posts that all of the associations have made just in the past couple of weeks. So I can go down and just look through anything interesting that they've posted and just say, oh, that's really interesting. And I can post it on another page. I'll just go share. And then you can share on your own timeline, or you can share on a page that you manage. And then I would say when you share things, especially if you have Facebook connected to other social media channels like Twitter, for example, make sure you put something in here, say, this is a very interesting post that I just came across. And then you can post it, for example. Now, the way to set up an interest list is extremely easy. So I'm going to go back here for a moment and go add interest, and then create a list. And I've already created interest lists, but you can go up to here, facebook.com/add list, and then it's going to give you some suggestions that are already in here. But I'm going to say I'm going to search for New York, for example, and I'm going to create a new list that's just New York, New York. And then I'm going to choose another list that says New York. And you can do this for as many things or for whatever topics that you want. Now, there's 3 different things that you can use for this when you do interest lists. It can be public, which means that other people can see it, they can follow it. There's a selection that are friends only, and they can only subscribe to it, or only me. That is entirely up to you. If you are doing things like checking out your competition, for example, you might want to have a list that says only me, because you might, depending on how you label it, you don't want other people to see that. These show on, or these can only be done on your personal profiles. Business profiles have been playing with the fact whether you could do interest lists for businesses, but the ability to do that is very, very new, and I don't know whether it's going to stick around or not, so I wouldn't suggest that. So using your personal profile is how you're going to build these lists. So I'm going to say, in this case, a public list, and then done. So I now have this list, and it's starting off, and it's going to give me some list suggestions on here. So I'm going to add this one. And then in order to add something to a list, you're going to want to find the page that you want to add to it. So Rensselaer County Tourism, for example, is in New York State. So I'm going to go over and I'm going to copy the name of this. And I'm going to go back to this list that I've created, and I'm just going to plug it in here. And if you've spelled it right, or you've copied it right, this is going to pop up. And then you can see which ones you've added. If you try to add something again, it might give you a suggestion, but it won't let you add it again. This is a little frustrating for some people, especially if they have bigger lists, because they may not realize, oh, I already added this. Why isn't it taking it? Well, that's the reason that they're not letting you do that. But again, what this will do is this is going to help you aggregate all of the information for you. So when you're looking for things to post, whether it's to share on your Facebook business page or to bookmark for posting later on, this is going to let you get all that information together. Now you can always switch this list. You can rename it, you can edit it, you can delete it. So in this case, I'm actually going to delete this list because I don't really need it. Now, one of the other things I get is, well, okay, I'm using interest lists all the time. It's, great for aggregating information, but I came across this great post about, let's see, a video memory from the audience dance. Well, it's 8:16 in the morning, and my audience on Facebook may not be on at 8:16 in the morning. So I may not necessarily want to share this right now. And I'm going to go off topic for a second, talk about insights for a second. So if you haven't been on with me before, your insights on a business page are very, very important to look at and analyze at least once a week or at least once a month to figure out when is the best posting time for your content. Because as I said, my audience on Facebook for my business page may not be on at 8:17, but they may be at peak at 10 o'clock in the morning. So what I'll do for this one, for example, is I'm going to click on the timestamp, and every Facebook post has a unique URL. So I'm going to copy this, and then I'm going to go over to a page that I manage. And I'm going to plug this in. And I might write something about it. So I might write, oops. Okay, now again, I can post this now because it's brought in this link that I copied and pasted, or I can go and schedule it. And in this case, I'm going to schedule it for a little bit later. I'm going to schedule it for the 21st at 10. And for those who haven't scheduled things before, you can use the scheduling tool to pre-schedule as far in advance as you want. So when you're doing content curation and aggregation, especially on Facebook, go ahead and find a whole bunch of posts that you really like. Copy those links, either put them directly into your scheduler, or I personally put them into a Google Docs document so I can access it, and then write down the date and time that I want to post it. So in this particular case, this is scheduled for Monday. So I'm going to go back and see post. And once you've scheduled this post, you can go in and edit it. So say this event, for example, got rescheduled, it got canceled. I can go in and edit this, or I realized, oh my gosh, I spelled something wrong. So I can go in and edit it, and it will let me change it or reschedule it. So again, you can reschedule or schedule as many posts in advance as you want. So this goes back to putting some time aside in your week to start aggregating content and putting it together for you, because then it's done. You don't have to worry about it for the rest of the week. Now that's kind of Facebook in a nutshell, and I'm going to go over to Twitter for a moment. And this is an account we just started working on. Now, Twitter, even if you're not going to actively use it, there's a couple of things that I would suggest that you do. one, set up a Twitter account, because you do need to monitor it, because people do talk about businesses on Twitter. From a reputation management perspective, you really need to go on and see every couple weeks, once a month perhaps, more frequently is what I would suggest, and just see if anyone's talking about your business on here. You can do it by your Twitter avatar, or your, I'm sorry, not avatar, your Twitter handle, which in this case was HV Innkeepers, or you can search Twitter for your name. So let's put in like Jane Doe, for example. And Twitter search acts a lot like Google search. So if someone's talking about your business, you could put in your business name. In this case, ooh, maybe I shouldn't have searched for that one. Let's try something else. You never know sometimes when you search for things. This is going to be an interesting morning already, I can tell. But you know, you can search for your business name in here and then it will come up. I'll search for mine just as an example, because at least I know that one's safe. And so it'll come up with my account, and it will also come out with, for example, here are some people that mentioned me. So here's live. And so here's some more mentions that we have. Okay. Now, when you first start out with a Twitter account, you're not going to have any information in there. It's going to look like a blank slate. Now, the useful parts of Twitter is, one, you can set up, if you have a Facebook business page, you can set up a feed. And how to do that is you'll go to facebook.com and then you'll type in Twitter. And then it's going to give whatever business pages you have, it'll let you link to your Twitter account, for example. And then anything you post in your Facebook page will automatically transfer into Twitter. Now, why do this? Even if you're not actively going to participate in this, this particular account, for example, we set up primarily just as a feed. So this is what a typical post shows up. Anytime you see this, the fb.me, this is a feed directly from their Facebook page. Now, why do this? When we started this out not too long ago, this is a brand new account, we didn't have anybody following us. Now, just from posting content information about things to do in the Hudson Valley, for example, we now have 6 followers in a very short time for not actively doing anything on Twitter except having the feed. So we're posting information, and these 6 people are finding this interesting. We haven't actively gone out to search for other people to follow, which will increase our following count. The primary reason to set this feed, though, up is Twitter had a deal quite a while ago with Google called the Fire Hose, where tweet content actually ended up in Google search. They severed that a few years ago, but just this past year they brought this back again. So Twitter posts are actually influencing your search engine optimization. So if you're posting things and you're occasionally posting things about your business, that's ending up impacting Google search. Now, one of the questions I get in terms of, well, if it's impacting Google search, you said, try not to post about my business that much, if at all. I'm not saying don't post about it at all, but realistically, 1 in every 6 posts can be or should be about your business. The other 5 posts can be about relevant, helpful, informational, funny, interesting, beautiful, anything that would draw attention. It doesn't necessarily have to be about your business. Because if you have, as an example, a really funny video that you found, clean, of course, about somebody dancing, and you know, a little old lady, and it's very, very cute, and you post it on your page and you just put a nice comment in there that says, wishing everyone has a wonderful weekend. Here's a smile to start it off with. That's a nice, engaging post. And while it may seem senseless to do that, from the perspective of it really isn't, because people get drawn to things. If you participate on Facebook, if you participate on any type of social media at all, you'll see that a lot of the things get posted are either negative, positive. A lot of them fall into the category of cute, or just plain interesting. Those are the ones that attract attention. Now, why is that good from a brand perspective? Because all those people that'll say, look at that cute little grandmother dancing, they're going to like the post. So they've come to your page specifically for that. They're going to share your post, which is primarily the reason to do this. And when they share it, your brand name on your Facebook page is going to be attached to that share. And so through that, when they share it onto their personal page, your brand name's attached to that. So their friends that see that are also going to see your branding. So it's an indirect way of getting your name out there basically for free. Now, one of the things that I find the most useful about Twitter, and again, even if you're not going to connect your Facebook page to your Twitter account, you're not going to monitor it, set a Twitter account up for lists. Now, lists is a feature that have been around for years and years and years. Many people don't know about them, but they're humongously helpful. They're much like interest lists on Facebook. So in this particular case, we've started one list. And similar to Facebook interest lists, what a Twitter list does is it aggregates information. So I have on Hudson Valley, we've started a list, things to do and see. Now the important part of this is what it's doing is it's aggregating all the content that these 46 people are posting. So I could do a bunch of things with this. I could reply to it. I could retweet it. Someone already did retweet this, for example, and retweeting is basically reposting to your own account, or you can just use it for content aggregation. Now, the important part about using list versus following people is I'm not actually following any of these people with this account, but I'm following their tweets. And it's similar to interest lists. My interest lists haven't liked any of those pages that I'm aggregating content from. They're just aggregating the content. Now I'm going to go to members, for example, and we'll go down to, let's find one. Oh, actually, I'll use this one, CAA, for example. So Culinary Institute is in the Hudson Valley, so they're on this list. They have only created a couple of their own lists. These are ones that they've created, but they're a member of numerous ones. So one of the things about interest list or regular lists when you're using Twitter, you don't necessarily have to start from scratch. You can go out and find accounts in a particular industry. So if you're in woodworking, for example, you could find a woodworking magazine that had a Twitter account. Go and see if they're on any lists or have any lists, because what you can do then is you can actually go and follow their lists. So then it's going to aggregate all of the information that they've put together, and they've done all the hard work for it. And you can just go back and look at that. So culinary shoes, which I'm assuming they mean schools, but you never know. I could go over and subscribe to this list. And now when I go back to home, I actually have two lists. And one of them are ones that someone else has already done all the heavy lifting for me. Now I'm going to take this one off, for example, so you can unsubscribe. Now, how do you put on a list? So I found some pages. So the best way realistically to find lists is either find industry standards, find out what lists they are, look at other people's lists, or if you're looking at Woodworking Magazine, for example, they're going to have, if they have an active Twitter account, they're generally going to have a Facebook icon, they're going to have a Twitter icon on their home pages. So from their actual website, go find their Twitter account from there. So say this is the Woodworking Pages Twitter account. So how do I add them to a list? Right here, I could follow them, which I don't really want to do, or I can add them to a list. So if you click on that little cog and you go add or remove from lists, I can either add them to this one, or I can create a new list. So I'm going to create a test list in this case, a description, which can be, I'm just going to put test in here, and then public or private. Now, public is in the category of that other list that I was on from CIA was a public list, so I could follow it. A private list means that nobody but you can see the content or the fact that people have put you on a private list. So if you're stalking your competition on Twitter, which I actually really do recommend, and you're looking at them on Facebook, for example, you're aggregating their content, put those on private lists so that they don't know they're listed, for example, and then just save list. So I'm going to go home again. So there's my test list. And similar to a Facebook interest list, you can go and you can edit it. So if you make a mistake in this, don't be afraid of it. You can go back and you can fix it. I don't want to keep this list, for example. So in this particular case, I'm going to delete it. But as you come across additional information sources on Twitter, again, whether you choose to use Twitter or not use Twitter is entirely up to you. But use and integrate interest lists into your curation content strategy because there's a huge amount of information on here. They call it the Twitter fire hose for a reason, is because there is a constant stream of information going by. Once you're following more people or you have a lot of people on lists, the amount of content going by, and be specific when you put people on lists. Don't just put them on general ones because you're going to want to cherry pick in terms of what information you're going to find relevant and what information you're not going to. If you've put someone onto a list, for example, and you found out that they're not putting out quality content, then just go ahead and take them off. It's quite easy to do that. Now, how do you aggregate and organize yourself? There's a couple of different ways. My personal favorite is Google Docs because I can have things all together, but you can use Microsoft Word, you can use any word processing. There's a couple of other things that I can go over in a little bit that are also ways to aggregate the content and make yourself a bit more organized. Because once you've gotten all that content together, you've gotten those aggregation sources together, it makes it so much easier and so much less time consuming to do things. So I'll use, we're just started working with the Hudson Valley Lodging Association, and every Friday is an example. We are doing a featured member every week. So we have it done. This is all the members that they have with their information. And we've scheduled the dates because these are consecutive, so we can either do them randomly, but what we've done is we've set aside, 3/18, for example, we're going to feature Bucks Homestead B&B. So as soon as I've actually done that and posted, I'm just going to mark this so I know that it's been done. And so what we can do too is if you have something that you're going to consistently promote, and it doesn't have to be necessarily at this point, something else, but if you have, every Thursday your business does X, they have a special offer, they have a special sale for whatever, start putting that into a content calendar and then marking it off when you've posted it. Now, the easiest way to do this is create something in whatever version or wherever you like into some sort of spreadsheet, and then have another Word document attached to it and start putting the content that you're going to post together in here. In this particular case, I have a file folder on my computer with images of these particular ends so that I wrote all of these up in advance. I know that I posted them on those particular days, and now on this Friday, for example, what I will do, and I usually get ahead of this by this week, by at least once a week, what I'll do is I'll just have a blurb ready for this, and then I'll go out, because we just started this, I'll just go out and pull the information, basically copy and paste into Facebook and into Google Plus and whatever other social media content that I'm using, and add the photo and then publish it. Or in this particular case, if I'm way ahead of myself, I'll go in Facebook and I'll pre-schedule it. So let me close these up. Now, in terms of aggregating content, when you come across something of interest, bookmark it, because you never know when you're going to need something. So Hudson Valley Lodging Association, for example, we've started to bookmark as they've come across up in articles that I've been reading. These are some interesting things that are going to be coming up in the next couple of months. Granted, this is a little bit far out, but I also have some interesting things that popped up on recent articles that I'm going to link to. So you can get ahead of yourself a little bit by using, and this is the easy way to do this, just put it in a Word document, but you can also put it into Excel. You can put it into any other format that you like. And once you start getting ahead of that content, getting ahead of ideas specifically, you can use those for all different types of things. We have a couple things in here that we're going to use for the Lodging Association blog topics, for example. These are some interesting things that I came across just from my own knowledge that I'm going to go and check out, because they have more information that I can go and cherry pick from. Okay, now here's another one. This is called Feedly. You might have some of the information that a company that you're interested in, information that you're following. To use the woodworking analogy again, you know, Woodworking Magazine may not have a Facebook page, which I would probably doubt. They may not have a Twitter account, but they might have a really informational blog. Now, Feedly is what's called a RSS reader, which is Real Simple Syndication. And if you have blogs that you follow, some of them have a subscribe by email option. So anytime they've created a new blog, you can just subscribe to the blog, and then anytime they've published a new blog, it will go into your email. Unfortunately, not all blogs have enabled that option. So one of the other things you can do is use an RSS reader. There's a lot of different ones out there. They're all free. My personal favorite is called Feedly.com. It's Feedly.com. And what this does is it aggregates blog content. So these are ones that just got posted very, very recently. So from a content curation standpoint, if their last blog was about, different types of maple wood, for example, and I wanted to use that link and write a little blurb about how I thought that blog was really interesting, I could go into all of this, and these are the recent posts just in the past week that have been published on any blogs that I have linked in Feedly. And it's very, very easy to add someone's blog address into here. So I hit add content, and then I go out and find the blog that I'm looking for, sort of like, this is not the droid we're looking for, and I plug this in and it will let me add it, and then it's done. And then it's going to be aggregating all of that content into here. I'm going to pop over here for a moment. Now, some of the other ways to aggregate content is to use something called Pocket, and it's getpocket.com. It doesn't cost anything, and it's really terrific because if I'm out in, let me go to Google, for example, and just use something as an example. Group discount programs. That's a good one because I was looking that up recently. So Hertz.com. Now, say this particular page had something of interest to me, which it doesn't, but I'm just going to use this as an example. I have something up here called, it's just a tab on my browser called Get Pocket. So I'm just going to hit that, and then Pocket is going to appear. Oops, let me do it again. And this is going to go add tags. So what I could say is Hertz cars and it's going to save my tags. Now what Pocket does is when you tag things, you can go back and search for things. So as you're roaming the internet looking for content, and you may not necessarily want to have your Word document open, you may not want to have Google Docs open, Get Pocket is a great way to save a page kind of instantly, because right now that link is in here, and I could also search for it. So if I wanted to search by Hertz, it would bring this particular title up. So I have a bunch of tags saved in here specifically that say something like social media marketing, or Instagram, which is something that I'm still researching for businesses because I get a lot of questions about it. So I could go in here and search for, let's do Instagram as a good example of this actually. So these are posts that I thought were actually really good articles that I'm going to go back to, that I've read, but they have pertinent information for when I start to actually be able to tell people, yes, Instagram is worthwhile for you to use for marketing. I personally feel right now that it's not, but it's good for me to aggregate information about it, about how to use it. I personally don't use it much, even though I have an Instagram account, but it's still a good way for me to gather content together. And it's very easy to use. Like in this particular case, I'm going to delete this. But it also lets you add additional things. So if you say, right now this is only tagged, this particular post is only tagged with Instagram. If I wanted to add some additional tags, I could say social media. And then now if I search for social media within this particular one and some of the other ones that I have saved are going to come up as well. Now, Workflowy is another one that I find extremely helpful as well in terms of bookmarking things. It's very, very simplified, but it's also really neat in terms of the fact that you can just plug a link in here and it's hot. And you can also do a couple of things with this. You can have drop-down menus, and then you can have drop-down menus within the drop-down menus. So if you have a blog or you have Facebook or whatever, you're aggregating content about specific things, you can just go in and it'll tell you this right now. And again, similar to Pocket, there's a search tool up here. So in terms of aggregating things and being able to move them around, it's very, very useful in terms of that. And it also lets you export the lists, delete them, you can add notations to it, or you can hit complete, which means that once you've done them, for example, it'll cross it off, but you still have a log of the fact that you've used something already, which can be extremely helpful. Now, does anybody have any questions? Can I go back over how to do interest lists again? Yes, absolutely. So let me go back to Facebook and let me close some of these up again. And we will go to interest lists and then add interest. And the thing is, and then I forgot to mention this earlier, my apologies, is when you're in your home page, you're going to see interest down here. So you can click more, and then any of the lists that you've made are going to come up in here. So once you've created lists, you can go back to go add interests. And it'll also give you some additional ones. It'll give you some suggestions. So as you've added particular lists, for example, then you can search for some additional things that Facebook might recommend. So I'm going to create a list. And I'm going to create a new one just out of curiosity, 2 Cellos, which if you haven't heard them, they're fabulous. So great music. And then I'm going to hit this only me, so only I can see this, and then done. And so here's my interest list. So I'm going to add maybe Sting to it, for example. And so all I have to do is find them. It's going to give you some additional suggestions. How about the Bottle Boys, which are a quite hilarious group. And now all of the posts that they have are now going to aggregate in there. Okay. Does anybody else have any additional questions? How do we use Twitter? Oh, that's a long conversation all within itself. Um, if you would like to know a little bit more about using Twitter, I would be happy to go over that with you privately. It will only take a few minutes. Um, Anyone else? Okay. Thank you for attending. Before we sign off, don't forget there are the 2 handouts off to the right. It's the 25 things for any business to post about and suggested weekly marketing schedule. I have some additional handouts that might be helpful too. I've got a couple of content calendars that can be revamped to work within whatever you guys are interested in. How you can redo it however you'd like, and they're just suggested ones. If you have any additional questions about some of the things that we went over today, or you have thought about it after the fact, after we sign off, please feel free to email me. Okay, thank you so much for attending, you guys. Have a terrific day.